The grand hall of the Star Palace was full of light. Long silver banners hung from the high ceiling. Blue fire lamps burned along the walls. Music floated through the air, soft and rich, played by crystal instruments that only the high houses of the empire could afford. Nobles from many worlds stood in circles, speaking in low voices. Their robes shimmered like water. Their jewels flashed under the lights. Every eye in the hall waited for one person, the alien queen. She entered with calm steps, and the whole hall fell silent. Queen Siralith wore a long white robe trimmed with gold. A crown of thin silver branches rested on her dark hair. Her face was proud, still, and unreadable. She did not smile often, and tonight was no different. But her presence alone filled the hall. She looked like someone born to command stars. The guests bowed as she passed. Behind her walked 12 royal guards in black armor lined with red light. Their helmets covered their faces. Their boots struck the floor in perfect rhythm. For years, these guards had stood around the queen like iron walls. No one questioned their loyalty. No one dared to dot at the far side of the hall, near the main power controls for the ceremony platform. A human stood quietly with a tool case in his hand. His name was Elias Vance. He was not a soldier. He was not a noble. He was not even an important guest. He was a systems engineer from Earth Station 9, hired only 3 months earlier to help repair old palace machines. Most of the people in the hall did not know his name. To them, he was just the human technician near the wall. But Elias noticed things. That was why the palace kept him. He checked a glowing panel one last time and looked up at the ceremony stage. Everything seemed stable. The energy shields were active. The light bridge was aligned. The gravity field under the queen's platform held steady. Still, something felt wrong. At first, he could not explain it. Maybe it was the way the guards moved. Queen had just reached the center of the hall, where the circle of crowns was built into the floor. It was an ancient symbol of unity in the empire. Tonight's event was important. Leaders from allied worlds had come to hear the queen announce a new defense pact near the outer systems. Tension had been growing at the borders. Pirates, rebels, and strange attacks had made many people nervous. This night was meant to show strength. Instead, Elias felt a cold line run down his back. He looked again at the guards. One guard near the queen's left side turned his head for a second. It was a small movement, almost nothing. But Elias had worked around military men before. He knew disciplined motion. He knew timing. And that movement was off. Another guard had shifted position too early. Then Elias noticed something else. Their hands. Usually, the royal guards carried ceremonial shock spears during public events. But tonight, their grips were tighter. Too tight, not relaxed, not formal, ready for what? Elias frowned and stepped closer to the control panel. On the stage above, the High Chancellor began to speak. His voice echoed through the hall. Tonight, under the sight of stars and under the will of the throne, we gather to witness the Queen's pledge to the Empire's future. Elias barely heard the words. His eyes moved from guard to guard. 9 of them stood as expected. 2 were too far back. One had his body turned slightly toward the Queen. Not the crowd. That was wrong. Very wrong. Elias checked the security screen built into the wall terminal beside him. Tiny blue dots marked authorized. Palace weapons. The guard's gear should have shown green, but 3 dots flickered red for half. A second, then green again. His heart kicked hard. He touched the screen, calling up the signal log. Error code. Scrambled ID. Brief override. Someone had masked weapon. Status. He looked up fast. The Queen stood tall in the center ring, listening to the speech, unaware of the danger moving around her. The guests saw beauty, ceremony, honor. Elias saw a trap. He took one step forward, then stopped. What was he supposed to do? He was a human engineer in a room full of alien nobles and royal guards. If he shouted a warning without proof, palace security would drag him out before he reached the queen. Worse, if he was right and the guards were involved, any direct warning might trigger the attack early. He needed another second. Just one. Across the hall, Lady Maris of the Inner Moons lifted her glass and smiled toward the throne circle. The musicians lowered their sound. The High Chancellor raised both hands. The Queen will now seal the vow. Queen Siralith stepped toward the central platform. The floor under her feet lit up in gold. And then, Elias saw the final sign, one of. The guards reached not for his spear, but for the side lock of his armor. Combat release. Not ceremonial. Tactical. Elias's breath caught. He understood at once. If the armor unlocked, the guard would have full weapon access hidden inside the shell. Hidden from scanners. Hidden from the crowd. Hidden until the last second. This was not a mistake. This was betrayal. Elias dropped his tool. Caisson started moving. The metal box hit the floor with a sharp crack. A few nearby servants turned. One noble looked annoyed. No one else understood. Not yet. At the center of the hall, the queen placed her hand over the glowing vow seal. The guard nearest her took one silent step closer. Another guard behind her shifted his stance. A third turned away from the crowd to block the exits. Elias pushed past a serving unit and ran toward the ceremony floor. His voice rose before he could stop it. "Your Majesty!" Too late. The first guard's armor split open with a hiss of red light, and the grand hall, so full of beauty only seconds before, became a place of sudden fear. The first scream came from the upper balcony. It cut through the grand hall, just as the royal guard raised his hidden weapon. For one frozen second, no one moved. The nobles stared. The musicians stopped. Even the blue fire lamps along the walls seemed to shake in the silence. Queen Siralith stood in the golden light of the vow seal, her hand still above the ancient circle, while the guard beside her aimed a compact pulse. Weapon straight at her side. Then everything exploded into motion. "Protect the queen!" The High Chancellor shouted. But the order came too late. Two more guards broke formation at the same time. Their ceremonial spears opened along the center and unfolded into combat rifles. Red warning lights flashed across the hall. The sound of metal shifting was sharp and ugly, like bones snapping. Gasps turned to panic. The nearest nobles dropped their glasses and ran. Some rushed for the side exits. Others fell to the floor, trying to hide behind tables of crystal fruit and silver. Dishes. Servants screamed and scattered. A lamp crashed and sent blue flame rolling across the polished ground. Yet, the strangest thing was not the attack. It was the other guards. Half of them did nothing. They did not rush the traitors. They did not move to shield the queen. They simply stood there, silent and still, as if they had been waiting for this moment. Queen Siralith saw it too. Her eyes narrowed, not with fear, but with cold disbelief. "You?" she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. The guard nearest her answered by firing. The pulse shot burst from the weapon in a line of white heat. Siralith twisted aside with shocking speed. The blast tore through the edge of the golden platform and sent burning sparks into the air. The vow seal cracked. Pieces of glowing stone flew across the floor. The crowd screamed. Again. Elias was still running. He had almost reached the center aisle when the first blast hit. Heat pushed against his face. He threw an arm over his eyes and kept going. Around him, people rushed in every direction, slamming into each other, falling, shouting names, crying for guards who were either dead, hiding, or part of the betrayal. He saw one old diplomat stumble to the floor. A serving drone rolled over and burst under stray fire. Smoke began to spread near the stage. "Down!" Elias shouted. Though no one was listening. Another traitor guard stepped forward and aimed at the queen again. This time, one loyal guard moved. With a roar, He charged from the right side and slammed into the attacker before he could fire. The two armored figures crashed into a pillar with enough force to crack the stone. For a second, Elias felt hope. Then a fourth guard shot the loyal one through the chest. The loyal guard dropped instantly. Queen Sarala stepped back from the broken vow seal. Her robe was torn at the edge, and a line of ash marked one sleeve. But her face remained hard. She reached toward the thin silver band around her wrist. With one fast motion, she activated it. A shield of pale light burst around her body. The next pulse blast hit the shield and flashed outward in a storm of sparks. The force pushed her half a step back, but she stayed standing. So did the traitors. They planned for the shield. Elias thought. He saw it in the way they spread out, in the way one guard moved toward the rear controls, in the way another blocked the nearest exit. This was not a sudden act of anger. It was a full kill operation. They had studied the Queen's defenses. They knew the room. They knew the timing, and worst of all, they knew exactly when she would be most exposed. The High Chancellor tried to flee toward the West Passage, but one of the false guards struck him with the butt of a rifle and sent him crashing to the floor. Nearby, two nobles from the trade worlds raised their hands and begged for mercy. The attackers ignored them. Their only target was the Queen. Elias finally reached the edge of the central platform. A pulse shot ripped through the air above him and hit a hanging banner. Flame rolled down the fabric in a fast line of fire. He ducked behind a fallen table, breathing hard. From there, he could see more clearly. Elias pressed himself behind the overturned table and forced his breathing to slow. The grand hall was turning into a war zone. Smoke drifted under the high ceiling. Burning cloth fell from the torn banners. Guests crawled across the floor, trying to stay below the line of fire. Somewhere to his left, a child was crying. Somewhere to his right, a noble was shouting for a sealed door to open. None of it helped. What mattered was the Queen. Her shield was failing. Each pulse hit made the pale light around her thinner. The silver band on her wrist was overheating. Elias could see the glow under the metal. That device was not made to take repeated combat fire at close range. It was an emergency shield, not a battlefield wall. The traitors knew it too. They had stopped rushing. Now they moved like hunters around a trapped animal, keeping distance, firing in turns, forcing the shield to drain. They were calm, trained. Elias looked toward the nearest wall. Terminal again. Dead. He looked up toward the crystal chandeliers, still active. That gave him an idea. He slid out from behind the table and ran low across the floor, keeping behind fallen chairs and broken serving stands. A pulse shot flashed over his head and struck a pillar. Shards of white stone hit his shoulder. He nearly lost balance but kept moving. He was not running toward the Queen. He was running toward the old service column at the east side of the hall. Most people never noticed those columns. They matched the walls and looked decorative, but Elias had spent 2 long nights tracing palace wiring through them. The grand hall was ancient on the surface and patched with newer systems underneath. The public security grid had been cut, yes, but the overhead ceremonial power lines still fed through a separate relay. If he could reach that relay, maybe he could trigger something. Not a full defense system, just enough chaos to break the attackers. Lying. He reached the column and dropped to one knee. His hands moved fast over the lower panel seam. Locked, he pulled a thin magnetic tool from his belt pouch and slid it under the edge. The panel clicked and opened a finger width. "Come on," he muttered. Behind him, another shot struck the Queen's shield. A sharp crack filled the hall. Elias opened the panel fully and saw what he needed. 3 power channels, 1 backup line, 1 lighting control cluster, and a maintenance relay tied to the overhead crystal array. Old design. Very old. And very dangerous. He smiled for half a second. That was enough. At the center of the hall, Queen Soralith stood over the body of her last loyal guard. Her robe was marked with ash. Her silver crown was slightly bent from flying debris. But her posture was still straight. Her chin was still high. She looked less like a victim and more like a ruler carved from stone. One of the traitor guards stepped closer. "Drop the shield and kneel," he ordered. Soralith stared at him. "You first." Even now, Elias thought. Even now she talks like a queen. The guard raised his rifle again. Elias stripped 2 wires with his tool and jammed them into the maintenance relay. The result was immediate. The chandeliers above the hall flashed white. Then every crystal light in the ceiling burst into a violent storm of sparks. The entire room was flooded with blinding silver fire. Several guests screamed. One traitor jerked his helmet upward in surprise. Another turned away just as a rain of shattered crystal crashed down around the central platform. The floor became a field of broken glass and burning fragments. More importantly, the attackers lost their clean line of sight. "Move!" Elias shouted, though he did not know if the queen could hear him. Soralith heard something. Maybe his voice. Maybe only the sudden chance in front of her. She moved at once, stepping off the broken vow seal and slipping behind a fallen section of carved stone as 2 more shots struck where she had been standing a second earlier. The traitors spread out to adjust. That was what Elias wanted. A tight firing circle had become a broken shape. For the first time since the attack began, they were not fully in control. One of them pointed toward the east wall. "The human!" Too late. Elias yanked the wires free and rolled away as pulse fire tore through the service column. The panel exploded behind him. Heat burned across his back. He hit the floor hard, slid through broken crystal, and slammed into the base of a statue. Pain shot up his arm, but he was alive and the queen was no longer standing in the open. A traitor guard broke from the group and started toward Elias. This one moved fast, stepping over bodies and debris with cold focus. His black armor reflected the flames around him. Elias scrambled backward, searching with wild eyes for anything useful. He found a fallen ceremonial spear beside a dead court officer. Not a real weapon, but maybe enough. The guard lifted his rifle. Before he could fire, a voice rang out from the smoke. "Coward!" The traitor turned. Queen Soralith had risen from behind the stone wreckage. Her shield was nearly gone now, only a thin shimmer around her arm. But she held something in her hand, the side blade of her dead guard. Short, curved, and bright as ice. She was buying time. She knew she could not win in open combat. She also knew the human mattered, so she drew their eyes back to herself. The traitor who had been hunting Elias changed direction at once and aimed at the queen again. Elias understood her move instantly. She was saving him, a queen, betrayed by her own guard, standing in a burning hall, was taking the risk to protect the palace. Engineer, something changed in him then. This was no longer just survival. This was personal. He looked past the attackers and saw the rear dais behind the throne circle. Beneath it was a low access hatch that led into the underfloor systems. Few people knew it was there. Elias did. That hatch connected directly to the emergency power spine under the hall. If he could get inside, he might restore more than sparks. He might bring back the blast shutters. Maybe even the defense emitters near the throne. It was a long shot. And to reach it, he would have to cross open ground. Another pulse blast hit near the queen's cover, blowing stone into the air. She ducked, then rose again, forcing the traitors to stay on her. Elias tightened his grip on the useless spear and made his choice. He would run for the underfloor hatch. If he failed, he would die in the open. If he succeeded, the balance of the whole hall might change. He lowered himself, waited for the next burst of fire, and watched the traitors lock onto the queen one more time. Then the human engineer sprinted straight into the heart of the trap. Elias burst into the open, just as another pulse blast shattered The stone near the queen's feet. He ran like someone chased by fire itself. His boots slid on broken crystal. Smoke burned his throat. The fallen spear rattled. In his hand, he was not trying to fight. He was not trying to save anyone but himself first. His only goal was the low access hatch beneath the rear dais, hidden behind smoke and fallen banners. Two traitors turned toward him. One raised his rifle. "Stop him!" The guard nearest the dais barked. Elias dove left. The pulse shot hit the ground, where he had been running, and melted a deep black scar into the floor. Heat rolled outward. Elias hit his shoulder against a fallen pillar and rolled behind it, breathing like a broken engine. He was close now, only 10 steps from the hatch, but the guards were faster than he expected. The one from the dais moved first. His boots crunched over glass as he closed the gap. Elias heard the heavy steps growing louder, steady, without doubt. This traitor knew the room, knew the hiding places, knew that one exposed human meant nothing against palace armor. Queen Siralith saw it too, from her cover behind the stone wreckage. She made her next move. The traitor guard stalking her turned toward Elias's position. She stepped out, not fully, just enough. Her guard blade flashed in the firelight as she threw it hard. The weapon spun through the air, caught the light, and sank deep into a gap between the traitor's chestplate and shoulder armor. The guard jerked. Blood sprayed from the cut. He turned back to the queen with a sound that was half roar, half pain. That was all the time Elias needed. He broke from cover and sprinted again. The hatch was under the dais now. He dropped the spear and fell to his knees, clawing at the edge. Locked. Of course it was locked. He pulled his magnetic tool again and jammed it into the seam. "Hurry up," he told himself. Behind him, the wounded traitor pulled the blade free and aimed his weapon. Another pulse blast ripped toward the dais. Elias threw himself flat. The shot hit above him and sent a shower of debris raining down. The dais shook. Dust filled the air. Somewhere in the chaos he heard the queen shout, "Keep moving." He did. The hatch clicked open. Elias pulled the heavy metal lid aside and dropped into the darkness. He landed hard on a metal walkway, 6 feet below the hall floor. The air down here was cool and smelled of oil and electric heat. Dim emergency lights ran along the walls, showing old pipes, thick power cables, and rows of system boxes stacked high. He ran forward along the walkway, scanning the labels. Emergency spine, auxiliary grid. There, a larger access panel marked Platform Defense Core. Elias opened it fast. Inside were 3 main controls: blast shutters, shield emitters, and emergency gravity pulse. All dark, all cut from the surface lines, but there was a manual override switch under a protective cover. He flipped the cover and paused for half a second. This was not a small fix. If he forced the override without proper sequencing, the whole underfloor system might blow. He would have maybe 2 seconds to make it count. Above him, the fighting grew. Worse. Queen Siralith was now backed against a burning section of wall. 2 traitors faced her directly. The explosive round struck the throne circle with a thunderclap. The whole grand hall shook. A wave of heat and broken stone blasted outward. The vow seal platform shattered into burning pieces. Hidden emitters exploded in chains of white fire. Smoke poured up from the floor cracks. The air filled with the smell of melting metal and scorched stone. Elias felt the force. Hit like a hammer, he pressed flat against the floor, arm over his head. Beside him, Queen Siralith covered her face. When the blast cleared, they rose together. Throne area was destroyed. What had been a golden symbol of empire was now a smoking ruin of twisted metal and fire. The remaining shutters slammed shut one by one. The hall was almost dark now, lit only by flames along the walls and the red warning lights on traitor armor. The 2 remaining guards stood tall near the control pedestal. One held the grenade launcher, still smoking. The other held a long combat blade that glowed faint blue. They did not rush. They did not shout. They watched the queen, and the human with the patience of killers who knew they had already won. Saralith touched her torn robe and stood straight. "You destroyed the circle of crowns," she said. Her voice was calm. Even now, the guard with the launcher tilted his helmet. "We destroyed your rule." Elias stepped forward, power wrench still tight in his hand. He was not trained for this. He had never fought hand-to-hand. But he had seen enough. "Why?" he asked. The traitors ignored him. The blade guard moved first. He stepped toward Saralith with smooth steps, weapon low and ready. The queen had no spear now. No shield, no guards. She backed toward the dais wreckage. Elias moved to block the guards. "Path, stay back," he told the traitor. The guard laughed, a harsh sound through the helmet speaker. "Human, this is not your place." Elias tightened his grip on the wrench. "Wrong." The traitor swung. The blue blade flashed toward Elias's chest. He reacted on instinct. He ducked and swung the wrench upward. Metal met glowing energy with a sharp hiss. Sparks flew. The blade locked against the wrench for a moment. Elias felt his arms burn from the weight. Then the traitor kicked him hard. Elias flew back and hit the dais edge. Pain exploded in his ribs. Air left his lungs. He dropped the wrench and fought to breathe. The traitor turned back to the queen. Big mistake. Saralith moved fast. She grabbed a long piece of broken metal from the platform wreckage, a jagged shard of the vow seal itself, and drove it toward the guard's side. He twisted away just in time. But she was not done. She grabbed a fallen piece of burning banner and threw it into his FACEPLAT. Flame spread across the helmet. The traitor stumbled back, shaking his head. Elias forced himself up. Every breath hurt. He picked up the wrench again and moved to the queen's side. "We fight together," he said. Saralith nodded. No words needed. The traitor ripped the burning cloth free and raised his blade again. Behind him, the launcher guard took aim. Not at Elias. Not at the queen. At the floor beneath all three of them. "Jump!" Elias shouted. Too late. The grenade launched. The world went white. Elias felt himself thrown backward through the air. He hit something hard and bounced. Pain filled every part of him. His vision blurred. His ears rang with a high, endless tone. When the smoke cleared, he saw the crater. The dais was gone. Just a deep smoking hole where the three of them had stood. Saralith lay near the edge, not moving. The blade traitor was climbing out of debris nearby. Armor cracked but still working. The launcher guard stood ready for the finish. Elias tried to stand. His left leg would not hold weight. He saw blood on his arm. He did not care. The traitor with the launcher walked forward slowly. "Your guards failed you," he said to the fallen queen. Saralith moved then. Slowly. She pushed herself up on one arm. Her white robe was black with ash. Her crown was lost, but her eyes burned. "They were never mine," she said. The traitor aimed his weapon down at her. One shot to end it. Elias understood everything in that moment. The betrayal ran deeper than traitors in armor. There was a larger plan. Someone who gave the orders. Someone the queen had trusted. But there was no time for questions. Only action. Elias saw the power wrench lying 3 steps away, half buried in debris. 3 steps on a broken leg. He took the first step. Pain shot up his side. Second step. The traitor squeezed his launcher trigger. Elias dove. The wrench was in his hand. He came up swinging. The heavy metal struck the back of the traitor's knee joint. Armor buckled. The guard fell forward with a grunt. Elias hit again. The launcher dropped. The traitor tried to rise. Elias struck his helmet until it cracked and went dark. Then he turned, breathing hard. The blade traitor was coming. Saralith saw it. She threw the metal shard. It struck the guard's arm and made him drop the glowing blade. Elias picked it up. The weight felt strange, heavier than the wrench. The traitor reached for a side weapon. Elias swung the blade. It bit deep into the guard's shoulder. Plate! The traitor staggered. Elias swung again, until the traitor fell still. Silence filled the hall. Only fire crackled. Only smoke drifted. Elias dropped the blade. His hands shook. He turned to the queen. She was standing now, alone. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Saralith looked at the human engineer. At his torn uniform. His blood. His shaking hands. And she saw something no one else in the Empire had seen that night. A human who chose to take the blast. Not for glory. Not for reward. Just because it was right. She stepped closer, behind her. The last traitor stirred. The one from the control pedestal. He had been watching the whole time. Now he raised his rifle, straight at the queen's back. Elias saw it first. Without thought, without pause, he pushed Saralith aside and stepped in front. Traitor fired. The pulse blast struck dead center. Elias felt the world burn. Then go black. Silence hung in the smoke-filled grand hall. Thick, heavy silence, the kind that comes after battle, when even the flames seem to hold their breath. Queen Saralith knelt beside the fallen human. Elias Vance lay still on the broken floor. His chest did not rise. His hands hung loose. A dark burn mark spread across his uniform where the pulse blast had struck. The air around him shimmered with leftover heat. His tool belt was twisted. His face was pale against the ashen blood. Saralith touched his shoulder. No response. She had seen death before. Many times. Guards, nobles, enemies, friends. But this was different. This was a human, a low-rank engineer from a small world who had given everything for her. The last traitor stood up slowly. His armor was cracked along one side. One arm hung stiff, but his rifle still worked. "You are finished," he said. Saralith did not look up. She spoke to the body beside her. "Why?" Her voice was quiet. No one answered. The traitor stepped closer. His boots crunched over glass and metal. "The council sent us," he said. Now she looked. Her eyes were cold steel. "Council?" The traitor nodded once. "They say you are weak. Too soft with the outer worlds. Too slow with the pirates. The Empire needs new blood." Saralith stood slowly. Her white robe hung in rags. Her dark hair was tangled with ash, but she stood tall. "And you believe them?" The traitor raised his rifle. "Power believes itself." He pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing happened. The weapon was empty. He cursed it and dropped it. Saralith moved then. Fast. She picked up the fallen power. Wrenched. The traitor reached for his side blade. Too slow. The wrench struck his helmet. Crack. He staggered. She hit again. His neck joint broke. He fell. Dead. The queen stood over the body. Then she turned back to Elias. Still no movement. She knelt again. "You saved me," she said. Her voice broke, just a little. "You knew the cost." Across the ruined hall, survivors began to stir. Lady Maris crawled from behind a fallen table, her fine robe torn. The High Chancellor groaned and sat up near the west passage. Servants appeared from hiding places. A few nobles stood shaking, looking at the queen, the bodies, the destruction. No one spoke. They watched. Saralith touched the silver band on her wrist. It sparked and died. Gone. She looked at the human again. Then she noticed something. His hand. The fingers twitched. Very small, very weak. Not dead. Not yet. "Elias," she said. His eyes opened a crack. Pain filled them. "You okay?" he asked. His voice was a whisper. Saralith almost laughed. A queen, covered in ash, standing in a dead hall. "Yes," she said. "Good." He tried to sit up. Pain stopped him. She put a hand on his shoulder. "Stay still." He looked past her. "The traitors, all gone." He nodded. Faint. Then his eyes closed. Again, Saralith stood and turned to the survivors. Her voice filled the hall. Clear. Strong. Double quotes, open the doors. The High Chancellor moved fast now. He touched the emergency panel. Seals broke. Cool air rushed in. Palace guards poured through, real guards. Loyal ones from outside. Weapons ready. They stopped when they saw the Queen. They saw the dead traitors. They saw the human on the floor. Medical teams, Siralith ordered. Now, the guards moved, but some looked at Elias. A human, not even military. Why? The first medic team reached him. They scanned his chest wound. Critical, one said. Power burned through armor and tissue. Can you save him? The medic looked at the Queen. Strange question. Unspoken. A royal life against a human life. But she had already answered. Yes, the medic said. Stabilizing. They lifted him carefully onto a hover stretcher. Siralith watched them carry him away. Lady Maris approached then. Her face was pale. Your Majesty. The Council. Siralith turned. Cold eyes. The Council answers to me. Lady Maris stepped back. Yes. Majesty. The Queen looked around the hall. At the fire damage, the broken symbol, the dead guards who had betrayed her. She understood now. The attack was not just against her. It was a message. Power wanted to break her, but they had failed. Because 3 weeks later, the Imperial Medical Wing stood quiet under soft white lights. Clean halls. Silent machines. Private rooms for those who shaped worlds. Elias. Vance woke to the hum of air filters. His chest hurt. His left leg ached. But he was alive. He opened his eyes slowly. The room was simple. White walls. A single bed. A window showing stars through reinforced glass. On the table beside him sat a glass of water and his tool belt. Cleaned and folded. He tried to sit up. Pain stopped him. Then he saw her. Queen. Siralith sat in a chair near the window. Her white robe was gone. She wore a simple black uniform with silver trim. No crown. No jewels. Just her presence. She stood when he moved. Elias. He blinked. Hard to believe. The Queen. In his room. You single quotes read. Here. She nodded. You saved my life. He looked at his bandages. You saved mine. She smiled. Small. Real. A medical drone floated near the door. Your recovery is good, it said. Pulse burn was deep but clean. No organ loss. Full duty. In 6 weeks. Elias stared. Full duty, as palace engineer? The Queen spoke before he could ask. You are no longer just an engineer. She touched a panel on the wall. A door opened. 3 figures entered. High Chancellor, Lady Maris. A tall guard captain. In new black armor. They bowed to the Queen, then looked at Elias. The Council is gone, Siralith said. Elias frowned. Gone? Arrested, tried, exiled. She stepped closer. The traitors answered to them. They planned more than one attack. Your warning saved not just me, but the Defense Pact. The outer world stayed. Loyal because I stood before them alive. Elias shook his head. I just saw the signs, the High Chancellor spoke. No one else did, Lady Maris added. The guards were bought. Their signals masked, weapons hidden. Perfect plan. Until the human, the guard captain said. Elias felt strange, not a hero, just a man who fixed things. The Queen held up one hand, a small silver band. Not her shield, something new. She placed it on his table. What is it? He asked. Your mark. She touched it. A hala image appeared. A silver circle. Broken. Reformed around a wrench. The new royal sign, she said. You stand at my side now. Elias stared. Side? Chief Systems Warden. Personal advisor. Protector. The room went quiet. High Chancellor nodded. Lady Maris smiled. Guard captain saluted. Your Majesty honors what the Empire needs, the captain said. Elias looked at the Queen. Why me? She met his eyes. You saw betrayal when guards were blind. You acted when nobles hid. You took the blast. Simple words, heavy truth. Earth sends good engineers, she said. He almost laughed. Pain stopped him. Instead, he nodded. Thank you. She turned to leave. One last thing. Rest, she said. We have work ahead. The others followed her out. The door closed. Elias lay back. Stars shone through the window. He had come to fix machines. Now he fixed empires. 2 months later. The new Grand Hall ceremony. No smoke. No traitors. New vow seal. Stronger. The queen stood in silver armor. At her right side. Elias Vance. New uniform. Silver band on his wrist. His chest healed. His eyes sharp. Nobles filled the hall. New guards. Stood ready. Clean. Armor. True loyalty. The queen raised her hand. Tonight we honor strength. She looked at Elias. And new bonds. The crowd saw the human. They whispered. They understood. Across the empire. News spread. The queen who survived betrayal. The human who took the blast. The unlikely pair who changed everything. Outer systems. Pirate ships watched palace feeds. They fear her now. Not her, him. Council worlds. Exiled leaders cursed in cells. The human ruined everything. Earth Station 9. Engineers toasted. Our man did it. Palace under levels. Old service columns. HUMMED. Fixed. Stronger. Asterisk. The Grand Hall. Asterisk. Asterisk. Queen Saralith finished her vow. The crowd cheered. Elias stood beside her. Quiet. Ready. He had come as a simple engineer. He stayed as something more. Proof that humans see what others miss. Proof that courage crosses stars. Proof that when guards betray, one wrench can save a queen, and one queen can lift a man to the stars. The hall lights burned. Bright. No smoke. No fear. Only future. Humanity had arrived.